Hi, it's Sean Haynes with Agri CFO and the Ag Center. Kind of giving you an update on beef markets. Beef markets are up again about 10 cents per pound in the anywhere from 260 to 290 range of 4.5 weight cattle. A lot of demand out there for animals, not a lot of animals available. Feed costs have come down a little bit. Cutouts moved up about 314 for choice, 296 for select. So there's still a spread of profit at those values. So people are just kind of loading them up. Marketing for cattle year over year is down about 500,000 head from last year, which is just a lot of meat that hasn't been processed. So you've got this continuing constriction in supply, which is going to put upward pressure on prices. So retail prices are staying high. We're also kind of hitting this grilling season, which is also taking additional cattle off market. So I think for a while, it's going to keep things high on the beef side. Crossbred calves crossed that 450 mark this week. I'm hearing some rumors about 475. I think you're going to see cattle on the dairy side, drop calves get north of $500, maybe 550 before they kind of peak and drop back down again. Because at that point in time, all the profit for selling a dairy calf at $550 is in the calf at that point. You don't need to make any money retaining that calf and carrying them out to 4.5 weight or 5 weight with the risk. So I think you'll see some people just kind of shift from raising those calves to letting them get bought by somebody else to raise out. So that'll be a big difference. That's also pulling the Holstein bull calf market up a little bit. I've seen $175, $180 this week. So that's at least a little bit of a bright spot for some of the dairy producers out there. They're going to get some additional money for the crosses, additional money for the bull calves on the Holstein side. And even on the cull cattle side, we're looking at 85 cents to $1, $1.05 for cull cattle, which is really good prices. And I'm advising guys on the dairy side to kind of cull ahead in the herd 60 to 90 days with this milk price drop that we've got. Go ahead and take those cattle offline. We're going to lose money milking them anyways, get that higher beef check, and then kind of come back in when those cattle freshen back up again. So that's kind of the quick and dirty in the California beef market. Thanks. Dairy prices took a slacking this week again, down about $16.35 next month, low at $17, not coming up till $18 till late summer, say September. Cheese market's just falling apart and really driving down. Class 3, futures prices $15.12, and that's really pulling things down. Butter's holding stuff up. Butter on a international basis is still okay. And so that's going to kind of hold things up a little bit, but the cheese market's just falling apart. Some bright side, feed costs are off a little bit. Almond Hall is 175 to 180 range. Hay's been coming off. His availability is there, and guys are not buying quantities, but really doing hand-to-mouth stuff. And that hand-to-mouth feel has also been affecting silage prices on a forward basis for corn, where last year we saw $65, $75 a ton in the field. We're looking at $45 to $55 so far, what I'm hearing this year in forward purchases for corn silage. So when those things reset, we should get a little bit of relief in the September range. But until then, going to lose money. On the beef side, crossbred cattle in the 450, 475 range, probably going to top to 550, at which point I tell guys that we're retaining cattle at that point, sell them. You're going to make the money in the calf versus raising them up for 180 days and taking the risk. Holstein bull calves pulling up to $175 as well. And you're looking at cull cattle at 90 cents to $1.05, 85 cents to $1.05, depending what range you're looking at, which means, in my opinion, take those cattle you're going to have for 60 to 90 days and you lose money against the variable costs, right? They're going to lose money producing milk and they add to overhead. Maybe sell those cattle a little bit ahead of time, take the beef check versus suffering the loss on the milk. And then when your freshening herd comes in, kind of replace those cattle coming back out of the market again. So that's what we're advising some of our clients to do. A little bit on the bright side too, the federal government's kind of come in and said they're going to take 47 million pounds of cheese and sell it through some kind of food program or relief program. Not quite sure if that's going to be one big chunk, which would be somewhat helpful, or over 12 months, which would be kind of a drop in the bucket considering we have 840 million pounds of cheese on the deck. And really need to get that stuff sold down to about 650 million pounds of cheese before we get to parity with the market. So that's quick and dirty on the dairy markets, California. Thanks. So far, conditions have been pretty good. We're kind of delayed bloom on the almond side, which means we're kind of expecting a later harvest this year, so how that goes. Subjective estimate looks pretty good. And so that combined with the fact that shipments have kind of slowed down, we've got this kind of pushback into carryover again, and it's been kind of decreasing all-in prices overall. So we'll see where that all ends up. Not much news on the walnut side, except the fact that guys are still losing money on the price. Doesn't look good on the go-forward basis either when we got this large carryover and really need to clear it out. So we'll have to see where things go from there. But again, crop conditions are good, right? Lots of soil moisture, not a lot of crazy heat yet. Things are looking pretty well for that crop set as well. Cherry harvest in full swing. Guys, again, looking at a good crop this year so far. They're sizing up pretty well, 60% larger than last year. Box prices are climbing. I don't have a final yet on box prices, but I'll give you guys an update on what those are running. I know the initial box prices are kind of higher than expectations, and the $35 to $40 range versus say maybe 25 when they're going to settle in because it's one of the only fresh crops available on the fruit side due to the delay everybody else had. So it's kind of this showcase right now, cherries in the market versus peaches and other things that really haven't kind of come on the stone fruit side. Tomatoes, guys are still planting as fast as they can. I'm trying to get ahead of that date line as far as you can't plant past this date or not have insurance, or plant above this temperature zone and have insurance. So we'll see where most people end up. But if you get a crop in the ground and you have insurance on it, especially with prices at $138 a ton plus late season bonuses, you should make pretty good money on tomatoes this year. Crop wise, on the cotton side, just down in acreage. Prices have been pushing up a little bit in the 85 cent, 87 cent range for July. That's much less than last year, but seems to be some upward pressure coming due to some moisture conditions back east for planting schedule, which may make it hard for the crop to come in heavy in the other states that produce it. Strawberry markets continue to kind of hit that peak season. July is really when they're at the full production range. Prices really come off on the strawberry side. And just seasonality wise, we're seeing like organic stuff down the $8 to $10 a flat range, and then kind of standard strawberries down the $6 to $6.50 range, and probably trail off after that. Year to year though, production about 30% less than last year this same time. So really, I'm not quite sure if that's just a timing issue where the crop started a little later than last year, or if we've got some acreage that's just not going to get harvested this year because of the flooding. So we'll have to see how that washes itself out. But that's kind of the quick and dirty on crops. Thanks. Rates continue to kind of come off a little bit, maybe a tenth of a point, 0.15%, kind of sitting in that 6.5 to 7.5 range for regular mortgages, 15 to 30 year mortgages. It's come off a little bit, the spread a little bit for the jumbos, large home mortgages. They've kind of come down into the 6 3/8 to 6.8 range. I'm not quite sure why that is, but that's where maybe the credit quality has been better in that area, and the houses that are available are there. Still haven't seen the stress and what you normally see in the real estate market because of that. Just a lot of people looking for houses, not a lot of people looking to sell because they got a low rate, and what do they trade up to and what cost would that be? So it's kind of this weird stagnation that's kind of holding things where you wouldn't expect them to see. Ag real estate rates kind of stayed in the same range, really haven't moved around a whole lot, anywhere from 7.69, say, range, 7.25 range on the floating side, all up to 8.08 for 30-year money. It's going to create some credit crunch on that side. Not only do you have the commercial real estate markets falling apart, and banks pulling loans on that, which if you have a bank that does both commercial real estate and ag, they're going to feel that stress, conjointly. So you should see some tightening in markets there where they're going to have some stress, right? The bank's going to be covering costs, looking to cut them. Going to be a little slower to make decisions on the real estate side for ag. Not that there's a lot of ag real estate moving, but the cost of ownership have doubled. Commodity prices haven't responded in kind, right? And so you've got this continued stricture on cost of owning properties, and the credit quality we have to get done at the bank to keep the bank happy. So we're going to see what happens. Also, a little bit weird, it's off topic, but this jobs report, a lot of people are waiting to see where rates are going to go. The FOMC is talking about a quarter rate rise again, where they had been talking about staying flat on rates. This job report came out really strong, 309,000 new jobs, with a 0.7% increase in real wages, which would lead to more inflationary pressure, right? In this talk, but on the other side, you're seeing reports that show, hey, we revised some of that income, and real wages are up negative 4.7% versus 7. That's a 5.4% change downward in real wages. And so if I've got this crazy strong demand for employees, why would I see a negative growth in the wages for those employees? They don't quite, especially in a high inflationary market. So some of the things aren't really talking. So it kind of makes me wonder about data integrity, especially since they've revised the numbers twice in the past two reports. But again, all that's kind of creating uncertainty in the markets. Things are kind of staying flat to down while everybody kind of holds their breath to see what the FOMC is going to do and what this inflation effect's going to have with the jobs coming on. So that's the quick and dirty having rates. Thanks. Following up on last week's variable versus fixed expenses, again, variable expenses, the costs directly attributed to productivity on your property. More acres or more crop or more animals or more production per animal usually has an increase in cost associated to that, where your fixed costs are stuck, right? Your insurance, your rent, they're not going to move up or down based upon how much you're producing. So that's your overhead versus fixed. And you want to make sure that you're making money on your crop above your variable expenses, because if you don't, it creates a loss and adds to your overhead. We've been doing that kind of a lot this week with the dairy business, looking at this next 60 to 90 day down cycle and milk prices with high beef prices on the other side for the same cattle, and saying, hey, do we have some animals that aren't going to produce enough milk maybe my cost of producing 100 weight of milk on that animal is $18, and if the market's going to be at 14, I'm going to lose $4 for every 100 weight of milk I produce with that cow. So why suffer the loss in the next 90 days on that animal when I could maybe cull her a little bit early when she would have been culled anyways, and take that beef check and avoid the loss in those animals. That's one example of how you can kind of use variable expenses or the understanding of that to improve profitability in operation or avoid losses for a little bit. There's a lot of other considerations. That's a gross example. I know, you've got a calf in that heifer, genetics are great, whatever it is, but it's something you need to look at, like how do I minimize the effect of not being able to cover my variable expenses in my operation, right? So I don't add to overhead unnecessarily. Same thing in a beef operation, right? When you're going through and looking at animals that aren't doing the rate of gain, when you stick in these animals or weighing them and saying, hey, it cost me X amount of dollars per pound to get a gain on that animal. It cost me $2 to get a pound on that animal, and I'm getting $1.50 per pound, right? It doesn't make sense. I should call those animals, look for dinks, maybe sell some spot loads just to kind of clean things up and have animals that are gaining at a profitable rate. So if I don't understand that variable cost, right, per pound or per unit of production, and I miss it, and it's actually a loss per unit or per pound of production, I'm just adding to overhead and making my situation worse. I could have not farmed and been better off. So just to follow up this week, variable fixed expenses. Let me know if you have any questions on it. I want to hear any specific topics. Thanks.